Hey guys, right now we're looking at the thoracic cage, and the thoracic cage is part of the axial skeleton that surrounds the thoracic cavity. Okay, it's called the thoracic cage. It's composed of thoracic vertebrae, ribs, and other costal cartilages, and of course the sternum. The costal cartilages are made up, we know, hyaline cartilage, and hyaline cartilage provides some flexibility. The thoracic cage, its uses, it protects the organs inside of it. We know the organs inside of it is the heart, lungs, and other organs within the thoracic cavity. So we're looking at the thoracic cavity, and each rib we know is long, it's curved, and it's what's considered a flat bone. Okay, and there's 12 in men and women. I know that sometimes people go off the theory of the whole Adam and Eve, man gave woman rib, so therefore man should have one less. And nah, in both man and woman there are 12 pairs of ribs. Okay, and in the ribs, the first 7 pairs are called true ribs, and they're called true ribs because their costal cartilages attached directly to the sternum. Okay, the last 5 rib pairs, which is number 8 through 12, they're called false ribs, and we call them false ribs because they don't attach directly to the sternum. Okay, the false rib pairs, number 11 and number 12, are called floating ribs, and we call those floating ribs, those last 2 ribs, floating ribs, since they lack any anterior attachment, meaning they don't attach to the sternum at all. Okay, the space between the adjacent ribs is known as the costal cartilage. So basically, ribs number 1 through 7 are true ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are true ribs, and they're true ribs because they attach to the sternum. Okay, because they're costal cartilages, and we see right here, this part, you'll see this line right here, and that just signifies where the bone end and the costal cartilage begins, and those are true ribs. The first 7 are true ribs because their costal cartilage attaches directly to the sternum. Okay, and then we see ribs number 8 through 12. From here to 12, they're the false ribs, and we see that they have no direct costal cartilage that directs or attaches directly to the sternum, so they call those false ribs. And ribs number 11 and 12, these 2 ribs, they're those are called floating ribs because they have no attachment at all to any anterior anything interiorly. They have no attachment to anything pertaining to the sternum, so they're called floating ribs. And you have to be careful because these 2 floating ribs kind of are the ones that could break more easily. Like say you're doing something, those are the ones that kind of will break more easily because they're not attached to anything. So they're kind of more easily accessible to snapping and breaking. So, all right. And then we have the sternum. And the sternum is relatively wide. It's a flat bone, and it's just the anterior of the thorax. Okay, and then it's also called or known as the breastplate. So the sternum, also known as the breastplate. Okay, and it's composed of 3 bones, and the bones are fused during development. And the bones are you'll see the labeling here is the manubrium. You'll see a little space right here. It's called the sternal angle, and it's just this little tiny little bit piece right here. And then you have the body of the sternum, and it's this long flat bone right here. And then you have this, looks like a weird kind of ovally looking bone right here, and it's called the xiphoid process. Okay, and you have to be careful kind of with the xiphoid process, because let's just say someone's choking or someone's kind of out of it and you got to do CPR. You kind of want to be careful and make sure that you're doing CPR at the right place, because if you're down too far, you can go over into the xiphoid process, and it's kind of, I don't know if you noticed, but kind of right here, it's kind of a little sharpish a little bit, and it could actually puncture one of those organs on the inside of the body, and it could cause some internal bleeding, and that kind of could be fatal if it's just really drastic or detrimental. So just make sure if you're doing CPR, you just kind of don't go all the way too down, and don't try not to just pump too hard, especially if you're down in this xiphoid process area, because it could puncture some organs in there and cause some internal bleeding. So all right, then we come over here to the costal cartilage. Again, we saw the costal cartilage over here attaching the true ribs and the false ribs, and now we also have some on the other side, of course, and they're just showing you that this is the costal cartilage, and it's attaching over here to the sternum. Okay, and then right here in these spaces between the ribs is intercostal space. Okay, so that's just the space in between the ribs. So that's the thoracic cavity. Hope it helped.